Hello everyone, you are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my fellow island dwellers,
Mark
and Connor.
Happy Thanksgiving. Today we have a very special guest and friend of the show, Ren, joining us here once again to discuss Robert Zemeckis' Castaway in celebration of its 25th anniversary. Ren, thank you so much for joining us.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm so sorry that no one listened to the last episode that I was on. I feel entirely responsible. But I promise that I'm going to bring the heat this time. I've got a lot to say about this movie. So let's get going.
Sounds good. Well, one quick announcement first. Coming up soon in a Nightcap bonus episode, we're going to have an amazing pro take discussion for you. We'll be joined by screenwriter and journalist William Broyles Jr. to discuss his screenplay for Castaway and the process of making the film with Zemeckis and Tom Hanks. So keep an eye out for that. But as usual, let's begin with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
Ren, as usual, you are our guest. You get the first quick take. What have you been watching?
All right, so I wanted to start my quick take with a moment of silence. So, Cody, if you could please just go ahead and make an edit note to insert 4 to 6 unbroken minutes of quiet. Okay, thank you. So earlier this month, we lost one of my favorite actors. It's not funny. We lost one of my favorite actors ever, Tatsuya Nakadai, who passed away at the age of 92.
Wow.
You might recognize this name, but if you don't, I'll just say he's an absolute legend of Japanese cinema, having appeared in over 160 films since the 1950s. I actually noticed on Letterboxd, on their top 250 movies of all time list, Nakadai appears in 5 of the top 10, which is crazy.
Whoa. Yeah.
He's probably best known as the lead in 1962's Harakiri, or Kurosawa's High and Low in 1963. For which he recently won a Cinema Treasure Award for Best Supporting Actor Male. He even had a small part in Seven Samurai before he became a star. Wow. Each of these films are essential viewing for anyone looking to get into Japanese film, and I believe none of them would be quite the masterpieces they are without the unparalleled charisma, intensity, and sheer humanity evoked by Tatsuya Nakadai. Rest in peace to a true legend. So for my quick take, I wanted to talk about the anti-war epic that put him on the map called The Human Condition. This is a trilogy of films that I decided to revisit following Nakadai's passing. They are directed by Masaki Kobayashi, released from 1959 to 1961. The logline reads, "A Japanese pacifist, unable to face the dire consequences of conscientious objection, is transformed by his attempts to compromise with the demands of wartime Japan." So Nakadai plays a character named Kaji, one of my favorite characters in any fiction ever, who plays a morally sound yet naive young man trying to survive and retain his humanity while in the Japanese Imperial Army as it inflicted unspeakable suffering in China in World War II. As he finds himself in different positions throughout the war, he finds that his morals are an impediment rather than an advantage. And for my money, these are some of the most powerful films I've ever seen.
Wow.
The photography alone is breathtaking and establishes these very poignant visual motifs that carry new meaning throughout Kaji's journey. And it's just so gripping from beginning to end. Which is saying something. A lot of people are put off by the runtime, which clocks in at a total of 9.5 hours across the 3 installments. Ooh. I know. Wow. Which, combined with subtitles and black and white photography, is a no-go for a lot of folks. And I get it. I put off watching these for most of my life and just completed my second rewatch in 2 years.
Wow.
So with that, I'd like to make an appeal to you guys and your listeners. Please check out The Human Condition if you haven't already. If you're a man approaching middle age like I am, I know there's a very good chance that you're either in or about to enter a very deep phase of your life where you just get super into World War II. And that's okay. I want you to lean in, brother. You got to do it.
Yeah.
But the human condition offers a incredibly fascinating and clear-eyed perspective on the effects of Japanese wartime imperialism through a Japanese lens, and came out less than 15 years after the end of the war, which is kind of crazy to me.
Wow.
It's audacious, impressive, it's heartbreaking, and it's life-affirming above all else. I highly, highly recommend it. You can check out all 3 parts of The Human Condition on the Criterion channel, which also just put out a huge playlist of Tatsuya Nakadai films, so you can become as obsessed with this cool-ass motherfucker as I am. Mark, what have you been watching, big boy?
Well, if we're going to talk about The Human Condition, I thought, what better way to follow that than talking about Frankie, as we call it here on the podcast. Frankenstein, which was directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it was released this year, 2025. The logline reads, Dr. Victor Frankenstein brings a creature to life in a monstrous experiment that ultimately leads to the undoing of both the creator and his tragic creation. So all 4 of us have seen this film, and I think for a moment in time, we were actually going to cover it for this episode. But I think there were some differing opinions on the movie, and so we pivoted and chose something different.
I refuse. I will not talk about this movie.
Regardless of what you think of the film, I do have an open question to you guys. Can you think of another director with such a clearly defined creative identity who has found a project that aligns with his sensibilities as perfectly as Del Toro and Frankenstein?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Wes Anderson and old-timey typewriters.
But that would describe every film he's made, so...
Maybe Denis Villeneuve and Dune is like the closest I can think of.
That's a good one.
But Mark, I understand the question.
Okay.
A highly pointed question leading the witness, for sure.
Okay, let me continue here. I bring up the question because I think there's just a lot of pressure in having that kind of weight. And obviously he chose this project, but there is a lot of pressure in adapting a classic story like Frankenstein. And I think that pressure is infinitely compounded for someone like Del Toro, who spent his entire career empathizing with monsters and bringing them to life on screen. So viewed through that lens, I think his Frankenstein taps into the best of his aesthetics by creating a world that feels both familiar and otherworldly. At the film's center is a humanoid creature, which I thought was brilliantly portrayed by Jacob Elordi, and he's thrown into a world of defensive humans who attack what they don't understand. Obviously something we've seen before in film, but I also think this film operates as a parable about the responsibility of fatherhood and its lasting impact on future generations. From a visual standpoint, the shot composition and expressive lighting create several striking, deeply cinematic moments that I really loved. I know this was an issue for some of you guys, I won't name names, but sure, the script suffers from verbalizing its subtext at times. But I guess for me, it wasn't much of a problem because the emotions that are said out loud at times are equally depicted visually. So I think it makes that complaint more about redundancy than it is about using verbalizing subtext as a crutch to move the story along. Overall, I thought it was a beautifully crafted and emotionally resonant take on a classic story. I would recommend checking out Frankenstein, which is available to stream on Netflix.
Nice. I'm really glad that you loved it, and I did not expect this to be like a polarizing one for this group.
Yeah, me either.
And when we say polarizing too, I think Mark and the rest of us, Cody, Ren, and I, might be like 1 star apart in our rating.
Right.
You know,
Right,
it's
right.
not like we're wildly different.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't think it was a disaster. I just, like going into it, I knew how much Guillermo del Toro loved Frankenstein. And so I thought for his big opus that it would have left me feeling a bit better or more entertained. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And there are parts of the movie that did not work for me, but overall, I thought it was worthwhile. All right, Connor, what's your quick take this week?
So I went out to the theater to see Eternity, directed by David Frayne, which is coming out on Thanksgiving of this year. The logline reads, "In an afterlife where souls have 1 week to decide where to spend eternity, Joan is faced with the impossible choice between the man she spent her life with and her first love, who died young and has waited decades for her to arrive."
Hell of a logline.
Yeah. So I caught an early screening of Eternity this week and absolutely loved it.
Ooh.
Technically, I'd bill it as a romantic comedy, but I'd almost classify it more as a dramantic comedy, if that makes sense. Just made that up. It has, like you were saying, Cody, great original, thought-provoking premise in that logline that I'm still thinking about almost a week later. All I knew was that logline going into it, and that was enough for me, but I was so charmed and surprised by how much the film can play in its own sandbox, so to speak. I love movies that quickly establish the rules of the plot, get it out of the way, and then just have fun exploring how those rules work, and maybe even break them once we become familiar with the world. Elizabeth Olsen, Miles Teller, and Callum Turner all give solid performances as the main characters with some very, very fun cameos that I won't spoil for you guys. The production design and world building of The Junction, which is this waiting room in the afterlife where everyone has to go before choosing where to spend their eternity, is full of imaginative and really hilarious detail that becomes this infinite sandbox of ideas they can mine forever, like I mentioned a bit earlier. In a lot of ways, this movie felt tailor-made for our mid-30s age group, and I'm sure it will hit even harder for those with kids and families. I'm looking at a few of my co-hosts here. At the same time, it's a universal and timeless story that I think anyone who's ever been in love can and will relate to. So I can't say enough good things about this. It's one of my favorites of the year. I would highly recommend going out to the theater with your significant other to see Eternity. It should be playing everywhere by the time you're hearing this.
I'm so excited to go see this.
Yeah, I am too.
I will say I'm just totally a sucker for these kind of movies, so it really worked on me. But, that said, I'm hyping it up so much because I know you guys will love it, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will too. So going out on a limb for this movie for sure.
Cool.
Cody, have you seen anything good lately?
Yeah, I've gone out to the theater a decent amount recently, and for the most part, I've been kind of lukewarm on most of the things that I've seen, but my favorite thing recently that I've seen is Predator Badlands, directed by Dan Trachtenberg. Came out, a couple weeks ago, should still be in theaters when this episode comes out. But the logline reads, "A young exiled warrior must team up with a damaged android to hunt a legendary, unkillable creature in order to prove his worth to his clan." Predator Badlands is Trachtenberg's live-action follow-up to 2022's Prey, which, if you remember, at the time did not get a theatrical release, and it premiered straight to Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Prey was a really cool movie, I thought, and it was a shame not to get to see it on the big screen, but that has been remedied by the box office for Badlands, which is sitting at 140 million worldwide at the
Oh, shit.
at the moment.
wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's doing great, and the movie deserves it. It's so much fun. I believe it is the first mainline Predator film that truly immerses us in the perspective of the Yautja, which is the species of the titular predator. It introduces a sense of empathy into this franchise, allowing us to better understand these characters who have always been the antagonists of the series traditionally. And it's just a flat out cool movie. We get really well imagined technologies, weapons, creatures, planets. It's just great world building, enhanced by incredibly vivid sound design and visual effects, and engaging performances from Elle Fanning and newcomer Demetrius Kola-Amatangi. Of course, it can be a little predictable, but the movie does creatively swerve, and ultimately it is just pure escapism done well. So I would recommend going to catch Predator Badlands out in the theaters while you still can. This Thanksgiving weekend, do a double feature with this and Wake Up Dead Man, Rian Johnson's new Knives Out film. You will have a great day at the cinema, I promise. It'll be super fun.
Love that. Can't wait for both of these. I really want to see Badlands now that you have spoken so highly about it.
Yeah, cool.
And this is better than Jurassic World?
Okay.
Am I understanding it right?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I needed.
Like without a shadow of a doubt.
Wow. All right.
Well, okay.
So Mark, this will be your favorite movie ever by those metrics.
See ya, Castaway. Predator Badlands.
Okay, all right.
Taking the number 1 spot.
I think I was a little hard on Jurassic at the time, I will say,
Okay.
Mark. But yeah, I will rewatch it sometime. But
Yeah.
well, thanks for your quick takes, guys. Now let's move into our discussion about Castaway, directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Tom Hanks and Helen Hunt, among many others.
But not that many, right?
But
I mean, you're not wrong.
You say
yeah.
many, but they're not many people.
no,
Right.
you're right.
It gives us another month and a half. We have to build it. We have to stock it. We have to launch it. That's going to be tight. There's not much time. But we live and we die by time, don't we? Let's not commit the sin of turning our back on time.
The logline for the film reads, "A FedEx executive undergoes a physical and emotional transformation after crash landing on a remote island in the Pacific." If you have somehow missed out on seeing this legendary movie, fair warning, because it's been out in the world for 25 years and continues to have cultural relevance. So our general thoughts on the film will have some spoilers. Mark, here we go, buddy. This is your big moment.
Oh.
What are your general thoughts on Castaway after rewatching this time around?
Need to take a deep breath here. Okay. So if Cody's intro didn't give it away, Castaway is my favorite film of all time. And I think with that comes this pressure, which is entirely self-imposed, but there's this pressure to articulate my reasoning and almost defend my choice. And I think it's especially because our favorite films are obviously deeply personal, but they also give us a little insight into who we are. And so that being said, I am genuinely curious as to why this is my favorite film just as much as you may be as well. So what I think I've kind of boiled it down to is that Castaway is a character-driven story that continually earns your empathy. While the island sequence is vital to the movie as a whole, so much of what seals the deal for me are the bookends of the film, especially the ending. I think the decision to stage the film into 3 distinct acts is critical to its success, because if we cut away from Chuck while he was on the island, then we lose his isolated perspective and we disrupt the struggle of him to get back home. So by staying with Chuck the whole time, the idea of him getting back home is more of an aspiration than it is a reality. And so when he does return home, it makes it that much more effective when we see how much life has moved on without him than if we were to continuously change perspective, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The ending is an emotional gut punch, but not in the way you would expect. I kind of have to rewind time and think back to the first time I saw this film, where you don't know if he's going to get off the island or not. Chuck, in fact, does get off the island, but it's precisely because he survives that we feel the heartbreak of returning to a world that can't grasp what he's endured. He is transformed by overwhelming physical and emotional challenges, only to discover that life and the people he loves have quietly carried on without him. The final act of this film really avoids the cliched Hollywood ending, and it embraces a reality that is both heartbreaking and meaningful. One of the things that I love about this film is there's no real antagonist. And I think it would be very easy for the film to villainize Kelly's husband, but it doesn't. The story understands that tragedy doesn't always need a villain. Sometimes the antagonist is simply time and the inevitability of life moving forward. Kelly still loves Chuck, but she can't undo the 4 years of his absence that completely reshaped her world. The movie bravely asks the audience to sit in the complexity of two people loving each other, but no longer belonging together anymore. And I think it wasn't until I was married that I felt the full weight of how devastating it would be to lose the love of your life. And ever since, I've been unsuccessful at keeping a dry eye anytime I watch this film. Rewatching Castaway this time around, I was struck by how minimalist it felt and how that paired so well with the themes of the film. Robert Zemeckis' visual and sonic restraint heightened the sense of Chuck's isolation, while also making the patient entrance of Alan Silvestri's score even more powerful. On a personal note, I first saw this film when I was 10 years old, and I remember being completely obsessed with Wilson the volleyball. My parents had rented the DVD, and I kept pausing the movie to try to draw him on lined notebook paper. And at some point, my mom must have taken note of this, and she actually bought me a promotional mini Wilson the volleyball antenna topper from Blockbuster when she returned the film, which is hilarious because I couldn't drive, but I kept it around all the time.
Do you still have it?
I think it was lost during our move.
Oh, man.
Which makes me really sad because they're available online, but I think they're like $100 now, which is kind of crazy.
Whoa.
Still culturally relevant. The waves of this film likely informed my love for the TV show Lost, as well as my unwavering guilty pleasure of the reality series Survivor, which is almost at season 50 and I'm still watching.
Damn.
It's clear I love this film. I could talk about it for another 30 minutes, but I'll spare you guys. I am genuinely curious, Ren. What did you think of Castaway?
That was beautifully said, man. I'm very happy that you got to finally talk about the white whale, your white whale.
Yes.
So I had seen it once in theaters as a kid, and I remember liking it. And all this time later, I can still recall a lot of the story beats, a lot of the imagery. Wilson and skinny Tom Hanks were pop culture touchstones for the early 2000s. And I remember thinking it was like just blasphemy that Tom Hanks lost Best Actor at the Oscars that year.
Yeah.
So that's all in my memory. I rewatched Castaway this week, and I really enjoyed it. Part of me was hoping that I wouldn't like it so that I could see Mark punch a hole through his laptop. But I do see why this is so affecting and important to you. And Forrest Gump was the Zemeckis movie that I would go back to again and again growing up. But maybe if I caught this one on TV a couple times, I would have had a similar reverence for it. I think because the concept is so harrowing and existentially troubling, and I know I did just talk about the human condition, which is, just very gut-wrenching. It just didn't really occur to me to revisit it since having seen it as a kid. Like, yeah, dude shoves an ice skate in his mouth and knocks a rotten tooth out. I am good. And then he's just alone for years. But I am very glad that I did give it another watch because I can appreciate a lot more now than I could as a kid. Mark, you were probably a super smart kid, and I was not, all right? So just completely crash out. But on my rewatch, I was just waiting for the scene where Chuck gets separated from Wilson to emotionally devastate me. And yeah, super sad. That's fuck.
Yeah.
The moment that got me really choked up is after Chuck's been rescued and he's in the FedEx private jet with his old pal Stan, and he apologizes to Stan for not being there for him when his wife passed away. Hank's delivery in that moment is so remorseful, but he doesn't overplay it. It just feels so naked and it feels so real. And by relating to Stan's loss so earnestly, we see that Chuck might really be the only person in Stan's life who might have a sense of what he's gone through emotionally. But anyway, awesome movie. Connor, what'd you think of Castaway?
So you guys might be surprised to hear this. Like Ren, I had only ever seen this movie once.
Whoa.
So It was when I was a kid, and not long after it came out, watched it, some rental night with my family. It definitely hit me hard. Everything was new, and those big dramatic moments were my main takeaways. Like Ren said, from the plane crash to the tooth extraction, losing Wilson, and Chuck ultimately going home to realize life moved on without him, it all really, really affected me. Watching it again as an adult who's similar in age to Chuck, and now seeing it from that perspective, I found there to be much more nuance in between those big dramatic moments, and I understand why he and Kelly couldn't reunite in the end. I found myself saying out loud, "Oh, I'd be dead," like 10 different points during the movie. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Everything is so high stakes, and something small like accidentally leaving a flashlight on and draining the batteries could quickly become a matter of life or death. I think Castaway is one of those rare movies that immediately became a part of culture while also being a groundbreaking part of cinema history. I clearly remember it being controversial at the time because people were wondering how a movie was going to work with one actor alone on a quiet island for most of the movie. Like, I weirdly remember hearing a lot about this movie being made before it was out, and that was kind of unusual at that time. I don't know if you remember that as well.
Right, yeah.
On rewatch, I think it stands the test of time, and I was impressed by how well the island sequence works and how much it held my attention. Zemeckis made Chuck's isolation feel like a visceral sensory experience by pushing the boundaries, both in filmmaking technique and how it was made, taking a full year off during production so Hanks could completely transform himself physically. And I can see why the sheer amount of work it took to bring this vision to life would make Zemeckis feel like he mastered traditional movies in a way, and would make him spend the next 10 years exploring the new frontier of these CGI-heavy 3D features.
Right.
So I definitely enjoyed it, and I was surprised by how much of it I had forgotten outside of those big moments that stood out in my mind. And while I found the sequences like the plane crash and tooth extraction to be just as shocking as ever, like they're brutal, it didn't hit me nearly as hard emotionally this time around. But I think that's only because I had seen it before and I just knew what to expect this time back on the island. What about you, Cody? How did your rewatch go of Castaway?
Yeah, completely agree. And though I can't quite match the level of passion that Mark brings to this one, similarly, this is one of my favorite movies ever. It's currently sitting for me at number 19 in my top 100 films list on Letterboxd. I think the biggest compliment that I can give Castaway is that anytime I come across it on Turner Classic Movies or AMC, I would tune in and watch it all the way through to the end. That has happened dozens of times. It happened last year on a trip to Hawaii. I literally saw it on the TV guide on the TV of the place we were staying, and I clicked it and I watched the whole thing. It's just that good.
In Hawaii, of all places.
In Hawaii, yeah, it was kind of perfect. So, yes, Castaway is known for its powerful and relatable love story to bookend the tale of perseverance, as Mark expressed. But for me, I find myself fascinated and oddly comforted by the depiction of process in the film, which you guys know I love. First, Chuck Noland whipping the FedEx Moscow branch into shape and seeing the schedule of a man completely dictated by the whims of his pager. And then his struggle on the island, which has a life and lore of its own, replete with mysterious caves and an impassable riptide. He learns through painful process to adapt to and harness the resources of the island, and eventually leave it using a little bit of luck and the skills that he honed after 4 years stranded. So yes, Castaway is an emotional film that brings a tear to my eye every time. What makes the movie so special for me is that habit of rewatching it and the process within the movie, sort of the proficiency porn, if you will. And same as you, Mark, it inspired my love for Lost. And I probably saw Castaway around the same time that I got really into the Hatchet series of novels by Gary Paulson, which covers similar themes, especially the idea of forever being changed after an experience like this. So between the captivating survival genre and seeing process unfold on screen, this is pretty much a perfect movie for me that I always love revisiting.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. Love the process. I feel like I could have watched another 2 hours of just him on the island.
Yes.
Totally.
Doing
Yeah.
shit, doing crafts, trying things, failing, fishing. It's really cool.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, let's dive in further and move into our scene selection for today, which we're going to call The Island. Connor, would you like to give us the scene beats?
I would love to. So this scene starts around 28 minutes into the movie and runs for about 70 minutes. And this definitely stretches the definition of a scene. It's more of a standalone sequence, definitely the longest thing we've ever talked about on this show. But we felt compelled to cover everything on the island since it's so self-contained. So the first act of the film introduces us to Chuck Noland, a driven, time-obsessed FedEx systems analyst whose life is governed by schedules and efficiency. His world shatters when a violent storm sends his FedEx plane crashing into the Pacific, leaving him as the sole survivor and washing him ashore on the uninhabited island where the heart of the film unfolds. Isolated and stripped of every structure that once defined him, Chuck struggles through the raw basics of survival, finding water, learning to make fire, opening coconuts, building shelter, and slowly adapting to the rhythms of nature. In his loneliness, he forms an emotional bond with a washed-up volleyball, which he names Wilson, a fragile anchor to his fading sense of humanity. Over 4 years, the island reshapes him both physically and spiritually, until a bit of scrap, a portable toilet enclosure, washes up on shore. He finally has the skills, tools, and courage to build a raft and push past the crashing breakers. The journey nearly kills him. He loses Wilson, his new sail, and eventually his strength, but is ultimately spotted and rescued by a passing cargo ship. His rescue marks the end of his isolation and the beginning of an entirely different struggle, returning to a world that moved on without him. So, wow, a lot to take in. We always start with why this scene, and I think it's only right, Mark, for you to take us through why we're covering this scene today. Would you care to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I think plain and simple, we wouldn't have Castaway, the title, or the movie itself if we didn't have the island sequence. So it's quite literally the major event of the film. I think from a character perspective, it's not that Chuck is shown to be unlikable during the first act, but it's clear that he prioritizes work above everything else, to the point of taking friends and family and his own health for granted. There's an unsaid assumption that he will have all this time for things like proposing to his girlfriend, scheduling a dentist appointment, or looking into a cancer specialist for his friend. But the island quickly strips everything away from him. And he realizes that in modern life, many of the basic facets of human existence are kind of pushed aside in the pursuit of productivity. And so I think the island challenges that mindset and reveals to Chuck what becomes meaningful when everything else is taken away.
So humans are the only species that measure time that we know of, and we let it control the smallest actions and decisions. We take time for granted. Chuck starts the film by saying, "We live and die by time." And in the context of his work, but on the island, that motto is made literal as Chuck discovers a raw, unfiltered way of living, learning to measure life by survival, endurance, and simple but essential routines rather than arbitrary deadlines. He goes from modern man, just wrapped up in the daily grind, to essentially like the first man.
Right.
You know, he's a caveman and goes through all the different caveman milestones.
Also, stylistically, there is hardly any dialogue or score within this section of the film. So for a 70-minute stretch of the movie, it's a really bold take, with a lot of the weight being shouldered by Zemeckis' confident direction and Tom Hanks' emotional performance. The island sequence is a great example of pure visual storytelling. This was a sure-footed move by the filmmakers, and supposedly There was even some pushback from 20th Century Fox, who wanted to maybe include some voiceover and mainland cutaways. I just don't think it'd be the same film, as you alluded to, Mark, in your general take.
Yeah, I feel like it would lose a lot of the subtlety of his performance and just the filmmaking and visual storytelling that unfolds.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's such a bold vision, and I was wondering, like, how did this movie even come to be? I think, the inspiration and the concept for it, I was surprised to learn that Tom Hanks was actually the main person who kind of came up with the idea. He was inspired by an article that he was reading about FedEx 747s flying across the Pacific 3 times a day, and he imagined what would happen if one potentially went down, using that scenario to explore prolonged isolation and survival, 4 years without basic necessities like food, water, shelter, fire, or human company. And that's really where it all stemmed from, that main concept.
It's a pretty dark thought.
It is, I know.
You okay, Tom?
But I kind of get it. They're carrying all these, we kind of take for granted when we send stuff off to whoever we're shipping things out to, that there are people that are loading them up onto planes, and there's a lot of things that have to go right in order for it to arrive in its destination. So I think it is kind of an interesting exercise of thinking, okay, well, what would happen if that went down and all the packages were lost and there was a survivor that was left with all of that?
Yeah, so Tom Hanks originated this idea for Castaway. It was back in the early 90s, and he began developing it with screenwriter William Broyles Jr., who goes by Bill, by the way. So we'll start referring to him as Bill. But after they did their collaboration on Apollo 13, that's where it all started.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion with Bill. But I had read in previous interviews that he had used his own post-Vietnam War experiences in development of this movie, and you can kind of see that on screen. Through Chuck's isolation, the film explores how a person can be profoundly changed internally, even as life around them carries on without them, largely unchanged. And in preparation for writing this script, Bill had decided to arrange a trip where he was going to be dropped off on Shark Island in the Sea of Cortez for 1 week by survivalists. And he was left without food, water, shelter, or tools. And so we're going to dig into this a little bit more with our discussion with Bill. But the idea for the volleyball companion also came from him during that survival week.
So cool.
Because he actually experienced this himself, and he incorporated that into the script that he wrote.
Yeah.
And I kind of alluded to this in my general thoughts on the film, but this movie had a really unusual multi-phase production schedule. So it was actually shot in chronological story order. Shooting began in January 1999, went on for a couple months. During the early shoot, Tom Hanks was still at his heavier body weight that he had done for Green Mile, the movie that he had just made. He wanted to be this sort of heavier, middle-aged man to really show that drastic transformation that would take place later. So they took a year-long break for that transformation to happen. Famously, after the initial shoot, the production halted, and during this year-long hiatus, Hanks lost more than 50 pounds, grew out his hair and beard to authentically depict years of isolation. I mean, it really looked like he had grown his hair for 4 years. It's pretty wild.
Right, yeah.
And at the same time, director Robert Zemeckis used the same crew to shoot the movie What Lies Beneath, which must have been a selling point to the studio, so they could let that crew work on something. They don't have to wait around while Hanks is going through this incredible body transformation.
Ren, would that be a selling point at all, where it's like, oh, we shoot and Zemeckis was going to make this movie anyway for the same studio. Let's just like pluck the crew and put them over here, make that, and then all go back, so you're not hiatusing people and losing people to other projects. I mean, is that like accurate?
Yeah, I would say so, especially for someone like Zemeckis who would get whatever he wanted anyway.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many movies in a row he's probably put out that have gotten more than $100 million at the box office. It's probably quite quite a streak, so he can do whatever he wants. And then what's weird about What Lies Beneath is that it's not a cheap film at all. It mostly just takes place in the one house, but there's just so many special effects.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that just is a testament to the kind of power that Zemeckis had in Hollywood at that time.
Yeah, and so when they were on the island shooting, it took place on this uninhabited volcanic island of Monuriki, located in the northwestern part of the Fiji archipelago. It was chosen because it had no man-made structures whatsoever. It contained a picturesque beachfront and featured a giant mountain that Chuck could climb.
One interesting fact that I had read was that in order to film on this island, the production had to hold a formal sabu ceremony with the local owners of the island, and they followed a very strict environmental code of conduct. So that included replacing every tree they removed with 3 new ones and supplying food and plants for the island's indigenous crested iguana. Sounds really cool. And all this was in an effort to minimize the impact on the ecosystem. So that's a nice win for that.
Let's dig into what actually happens throughout the sequence. So because this is such a lengthy quote unquote scene, we're going to step through each of the major events on the island to give a baseline, which will then allow us to kind of jump in and discuss the creative disciplines of the film. So, at any point, someone jump in, but let's start here. We get Chuck creating a shelter using the yellow inflatable aircraft raft that he, rode on into the island after the crash.
Right off the bat, would not have thought of that if I was him, just to use that as a cover.
As a cover.
Yeah, it's smart.
Yeah, really smart.
I always feel so bad for him in those initial shots where he's just sleeping in it and is so confused waking up in the morning, after a crash in the middle of the night. I cannot imagine anything worse, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel so bad for him.
Yeah, just a terrifying series of events. And I also give him a lot of credit, after he establishes this shelter, one of the first things he does is spell out help in the sand, which then washes away. And then he tries to remake it using branches and wood. So his mind is immediately on getting rescued, and hopefully someone out there is going to be looking for that plane that went down, and he's trying to get their attention by spelling out these words.
I think it's a really good moment to include because, for one, it shows that not everything is going to go his way. And I think a lesser film would just be he does the help sign and then it moves on to the next thing that he does.
Right.
But it also, and a lot of this is going to be kind of portrayed in events we'll cover here, but it does show the resourcefulness of Chuck as a character. Once it does wash away, he has the idea of using heavy logs of wood so that it doesn't, it just a permanent fixture on the island. So
yeah,
just a nice way of showing the ingenuity of the character.
I think we're going to mention visual storytelling a lot. And one thing that that happens when help washes away the first time, it just tells us this isn't going to be easy for Chuck. He's going to have to redo a lot of things. And it's just a nice visual shorthand for that.
Learning by making mistakes. And Connor, I thought of you during this moment. His handwriting or what he's able to carve out on the beach, it's
his
pretty
letters
good.
Look good. I know, nice kerning and letter height. Yeah,
great kerning, very symmetrical
spacing. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
shout out to the art department on that one.
Yeah.
Never thought that.
Then we get to the coconuts. So he tries opening a bunch of coconuts to get that coconut water in a variety of ways. First smashing it accidentally and spilling all the coconut water, then sort of refining his method by puncturing a hole through it using what, Mark, chipped off rock?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't even know what kind of rock it would be, but just kind of making almost like a spearhead.
Yeah.
And kind of drilling it into the coconut. I'm going to put on my Survivor glasses for a second here. And just kind of mention that if you watch the show Survivor, this is a very common thing that they show on the series where contestants on the show, they very quickly realize how tricky it is to open up a coconut. It doesn't seem like it's super hard, but not only do you have to break it open, but you have to break it open in such a way that it doesn't immediately spill out all the water inside.
Right.
So very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see him doing this, multiple times, multiple different ways. Like a good amount of runtime is dedicated to this,
Yeah.
only for him to then find out when he successfully gets the coconut water out that there's barely any coconut water in it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And he would hold it like 6 inches above his face just so that the wind could take it,
Yeah.
just blow it to the side of his face before it reaches his mouth.
And that's the part of the process that I'm talking about is like, he's bad at this to begin. He's a smart guy,
Right.
but doesn't have the lived experience. And just seeing him develop that and get really good at it, I'm like, yeah, that is the sweet spot for me.
So one of the other things that we see multiple times throughout this whole sequence is the island fighting back, so to speak. Chuck sustains so many injuries on this island. It's kind of like overwhelming. One that was particularly brutal is when he steps on a piece of coral and sustains a laceration to the bottom of his foot. And so it's because of this injury, he learns to create shoes out of his pants. He rips off a piece of the fabric of his pants, and then he weaves together some palm leaves to kind of create a makeshift shoe, which I thought, once again, kind of a smart way to adapt to the environment.
Once he has those shoes, he's able to then climb the summit of the island, this mountain that we've talked about. And we think he's trying to get a view of the horizon, but he immediately notices the dead pilot in the water who's washed up from the plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for you guys. Would you have eaten the pilot?
Never went through my mind.
Oh, okay.
Luckily, he found him pretty early on. I don't know if he was that desperate yet. So
Yeah, he was a little bloated. I will tell you, if I was burying that pilot, he would have been naked when I buried him. I would have used all of his clothes also. Make some more shoes out of pants.
Right. I do kind of agree with you on that. That went through my mind as well. But I think it's obviously a really horrific moment finding like a dead body, and I think Tom Hanks' performance really sells it.
Oh my God.
But
yeah.
it also, once again, it gives him access to shoes.
Yeah.
And then we also just see that he's just a good person because he takes the time
Right.
and energy to create a grave.
That was my thought as we saw that too, is like, how did he dig that? I mean, that's a pretty deep hole. Like, did he just use his hands to dig it? Like, again, that took a lot of work and effort and
A lot of
humanizes
calories too.
him. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, ton
Right.
of calories. Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet he dug him up again. Year one.
Ren, you're really fixated on the.
It just seems like so useful,
You're right. Like over the 4 years, he's like, oh, where there are extra pants.
Yeah.
Another part of the sequence is we get these kind of like almost false hopes in some ways where Chuck sees a boat in the middle of the night while he's peeing in the ocean, and it inspires him to try to leave the island. He uses that same airplane raft, and it ends pretty badly for him. It seemed like kind of like a hasty decision, but a very human decision to try to go out and leave right away. And it's at this point he also tears open his leg on a piece of coral when the wave tips the raft over.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Here is where we're going to need to begin a series of doctor's notes.
Is there a doctor in the house?
First one, this coral injury to the leg, which is very brutal, and I could just feel this pain through the screen.
Yeah. So I'll kind of combine this with the foot injury as well, because this is very much my wheelhouse of like lower extremity wounds, injuries, and everything. I see a lot of puncture wounds all year round, and they can be incredibly dangerous. For me personally, I would be concerned for a couple different things. First would be a retained foreign body. So if he hits the coral and a little piece becomes dislodged and stuck inside his foot or leg, I mean, that could be a nidus for infection going forward, as well as delayed wound healing. He's malnourished on the island. He's not getting enough protein, which is essential for wound healing. In addition to the injury for the bottom of the foot or the plantar surface of the foot, it's catastrophic because it's a weight-bearing surface. So walking on an injured leg would reopen that wound, and it would dramatically slow the recovery. But above all else, my biggest concern for a lot of the bad things that happens to Chuck on the island would be the risk for infection. I think the likelihood of Chuck developing cellulitis or infection of the skin from these injuries is almost a certainty. There's a specific bacteria species called Vibrio, and it's very common in tropical saltwater environments. And so I'd be concerned about him developing an infection from that bacteria. So let's just say I would feel a lot better if a helicopter airdropped Chuck a bottle of doxycycline or a cephalosporin antibiotic. Nothing else, just that.
And that's it.
I mean, this is like at least the third time I've already said, oh, I'd be dead at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I
this
would
happens.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's probably what I would have wanted for him also. This is kind of giving me a whole new perspective of life on a desert island alone. It seems actually rather dangerous.
Yeah.
So from there, with his feet all mangled up, he discovers a cave. So he's crawling over the rocks. He uses the cave as the shelter. And that seems to be like his home.
Yeah.
Throughout like the 4 years that he's on the island. He does something a little naughty. He decides to open the FedEx packages, which I'm sure killed at the company man deep in his heart. But inside those packages, we see VHS tapes, which he finds use out of later when he builds the raft. He also finds divorce papers. He finds, I thought this was interesting, a Wilson brand volleyball on the beach. That doesn't really come back. He finds ice skates, which obviously become very useful as he uses them as a sharp tool and like sort of a dentist instrument. He finds some sort of costume garment with like a lacy net that he uses to catch fish. He finds a package with wings on the outside. And this one really speaks to him. This is where Chuck Noland, the company man, says, hey, we're gonna hang on to this one. I like the way that it looks. Someone took time to decorate the outside of our beautiful boxes. So this one might be worth hanging on to, and sort of from then on serves as a beacon of hope for him.
Yeah, I had actually read that the iconography of those wings on the Bettina Peterson's FedEx package were created by Andrea Broyles, the partner of screenwriter Bill Broyles Jr., whose middle name, Bettina, inspired the character's name. Chuck meets Bettina at the end of the film and kind of gives a glimmer of hope that he may find a new way of life after losing Kelly.
Just to go back to the items in the boxes for a second, all these items are really perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing that's too obviously helpful, and there's just enough of a random assortment of things to showcase Chuck's ingenuity and resourcefulness. Like as he pulls these things out, we're kind of wondering, for most of them, how is he going to use that? But he does manage to turn them into a useful tool. And, outside of these new items that he also has a couple other core things that he's been able to keep from the plane crash washing up on the island or just with him. So the pocket watch locket that was gifted to him from Kelly is a huge thing. He keeps that propped up with her photo in it in the cave. And also the flashlight, which he took from the pilot. Yeah, shout out to Robin Miller, the prop master, because all of these are really, really thoughtfully considered and crafted.
Yeah. And then, finally, the moment everyone has been waiting for, the creation of Wilson. So after cutting his hand in an attempt to start a fire using a hand drill method, and then he moves on to a plow method, the stick snaps on him and cuts his hand. Chuck angrily palms the volleyball and throws it into the brush, and then after calming himself, he goes and finds the volleyball, and seeing the human-like face marked on the surface with blood, decides to accentuate the eyes, nose, and mouth and place it nearby as his watchful guardian.
Yeah, let's spend some time on Wilson here. Wilson obviously acts as Chuck's companion and is the audience's entry point into his inner thoughts. So it gives the character of Chuck a natural way to express emotion without resorting to a solitary monologue, which is something that I don't think would be very realistic, or if it was, I don't think it would be as visually interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Bill can tell us more, but in the original screenplay, Chuck talked to himself more. And this was honed in to be expressed through talking to Wilson in the final draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading that Wilson originally planned to have a hand-drawn face, but Zemeckis insisted that the character should be born from Chuck's own blood, which is pretty morbid upon rewatch. Do you think the amount of blood required to make a hand face, or like a Thanksgiving turkey handprint, is realistic, or would he need to, find some blood from elsewhere?
I feel like that was a lot of blood.
It's
a lot.
It's a lot of blood for a hand cut, and it's all over his fingers too.
Right. Yeah, it would have to have been a very deep cut for sure.
You guys ever heard of the term pareidolia before?
No.
Right. It's like the car thing.
Yes. Yeah, it's in play here. It's that concept that humans will naturally latch onto objects that resemble familiar patterns like faces or animals. So that's, the idea of Wilson being a companion with this face shape.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that you can actually research online if you go on the Wilson Sporting Goods website is that the whole creation of Wilson is kind of interesting, because you would think that it was a paid product placement, but it actually wasn't. 20th Century Fox sent a request to Wilson Sporting Goods for athletic balls for a Tom Hanks film, and that's all they said. No real detail other than that. And so they kind of weighed their options and eventually said, well, if Tom Hanks is involved, it's probably going to be a good project. So they originally provided soccer balls, but the production couldn't get the paint material to adhere to the shiny outer coating to simulate the blood. So it just didn't work as well as they were hoping. So they ultimately swapped them for custom one-sided volleyballs with a matte surface. Normally, the volleyballs from Wilson have the Wilson name on both sides. So they needed one side that was blank,
right,
so that it could contain Wilson's eventual face. Like I said, it was not a paid product placement. Wilson donated 150 balls for free, which clearly paid off in the long run. You can actually still buy a replica of the volleyball on Wilson's website, of which I have at home. So,
that's really cool. All right. So getting back into the story, with Wilson now watching over him, Chuck finally creates fire and enjoys some cooked crab. So he gets the fire figured out. He's going crazy, so happy for himself. It really feels like a sense of relief for the audience, too, because he's been through so much up to this point. And a bit of trivia, Hanks had a blister on his knee during this scene, which got infected because he was kneeling in the sand, so many takes trying to get the fire right. He was hospitalized for 3 days and away from set for 3 weeks. So the crew worked on script rewrites and set building while he was away, but just goes to show the dedication that went into making this movie.
And how easy it is to get a bacterial infection with an open wound on an island. Proves my point perfectly.
But here, there's one of the most triumphant moments in all of cinema when he gets that fire figured out, the massive bonfire, and Chuck yelling, "I have made fire!"
Right.
I feel like we've brought up that line a lot, and the way that he says it is really funny.
His voice breaks a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he also just proceeds to burn as much branches and
I know.
palm leaves as he doesn't care.
Yeah. That's a good point. Little foreshadowing to conserving the, the amount of resources later. But
because at that point he's like, what am I going to be here for 4 years? Get out of here.
In his cave shelter, a little bit later, Chuck does the bit of math to determine the search and rescue area of the crash, and he figures out it's twice the size of Texas. So we get a first glimpse of Chuck creating an analemma, which is an astronomical diagram using the sun to chart his time on the island and track the trade winds. So we could see that crack in the ceiling of the cave where the sun peeks in, and that actually can let him know what time of year it is, and he uses that to his advantage later on.
Yeah, which I didn't really realize till this time around.
Clearly a smart guy.
Yeah.
I mean, doing long division with like a rock on the wall of the cave. I'd be like, I'm done. There's no way I'm going to figure this out.
You'd be like trying to leave the island in the middle of like the worst wind conditions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be a thought to me. Yeah. It made me feel very stupid when I saw
Me too.
how considered he was on all these things.
I wouldn't have even tried. It'd still just be, testing what things are edible on the island. So once he's in the cave, we get to the most gruesome moment of the sequence, the tooth extraction with the ice skate and a rock, which is disgusting. And this is one of the things where, this stuck with me after my first watch when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's so visceral. It's not particularly bloody, but you really just hear it. You feel it. You feel the scrape of the metal on his teeth.
Right.
But he's a man of logistical prowess, and he knew that it needed to be done. So total badass maneuver.
Yeah. I couldn't have done that. I would have just let it rot.
Yeah.
Yeah, just rot, fall out of my head. It's fine.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
eating on it anyway.
Yuck.
Oh, man. And last thing, I was so concerned for how close he was to the fire after he passed out. His
Yeah,
face
me
was,
too.
like,
Every
right
time I
next
see
to
it, I'm like,
Yeah.
he's way too
I
close.
was like, but yeah, gross. Continuing on, in the cave where he performs this tooth extraction, we also have to call out some of the sound elements by the iconic designer Randy Tom at Skywalker Sound. Was nominated for Best Sound Mixing at the 2001 Academy Awards. The sound of the rock hitting the skate and then cracking out the tooth, Chuck hitting the ground next to a crackling fire, it really pierces through the naturalistic, quiet sounds of the island that we've heard so far.
Right.
And like you said, really makes you feel this like deep in your bones or your jaw. And there's so many amazing elements of sound design on the island. It was a really huge feat. For one, because the ocean noise was overpowering, like anything that they were trying to record, pretty much all the island dialogue was re-recorded using ADR. And to make that replaced dialogue feel more organic, they actually played the new recordings through a speaker outdoors and then recorded that sound, which is kind of a cool workaround.
Yeah, that's super smart.
It's resourceful. And to intensify the rafting sequences, subtle dynamite and mortar blasts were woven beneath the crashing waves, just giving each impact of these waves a hidden thunderous weight. And I think something we all probably noticed rewatching it, the use of silence is also super notable. There's no birds, insects, or frogs that exist in the ambience because it would diminish this sense of isolation that Chuck is feeling on the island. It's just him, nothing else that we're really hearing.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark. No crested iguanas.
Right. I think this is a good example of creative and artistic license because there would be probably a lot of sounds of different wildlife on the island. But
yeah,
to better keep the audience in Chuck's isolation, the fact that it's devoid of any sound, just it makes it that much more lonesome.
And going back to the tooth for a moment, it's again that really efficient use of bookending of the film. It's almost like Chekhov's tooth, where we see it
Right.
bugging him from the very beginning.
right.
And the film obviously seeds that to us as the audience, up until this point. It really acts and feels like this major marker to transition us to a wow moment, which is right at this moment we get the 4 years later title card transition, which is one of the coolest shots in the film by cinematographer Don Burgess.
Yeah, that hard cut with the 4 years later title card drop just blew me away. Like I completely forgot about
Right.
that. So on rewatch, I was like, 4 years, holy crap! Like that is
Yeah, I did not remember he was there for that long, but
Me either.
this shot is beautifully composed, which it crossfades from the flames of the cave, like right where he passes out, to the shimmering bits of light in the shallows of the ocean. They did that visual match pretty well. And then, we see a fish come into frame, which is, I think, computer generated, but, holds up fairly well, I'd say, and kind of flounders into frame and is swiftly speared with precision and this great whoosh sound effect. And then we tilt up to reveal that it is a way thinner and bearded Tom Hanks, who in one shot has non-verbally shown us that he's truly adapted to the island. It's 4 years later. He's even moved on to just eating the raw fish, which we see him doing. And Connor, you referenced it earlier. This is the kind of visual storytelling that we're talking about that is representative of the entire film. Just inventive, efficient camera language that uses this negative space and minimalist compositions to sell Chuck's integration into the island. And it's all very thoughtfully put together by editor Arthur Schmidt, who knew how to just let the film breathe and show these processes.
Right.
So from there, we see that Chuck will discover a washed up section of a porta potty banging against boulders on the beach. And he kind of realizes that he can use it as a sail to get him over the riptide and the breakers of the island, which is a lesson he learned a couple years earlier when he tried to just take the raft out. He just couldn't get past a certain point in the water. So that kind of inspires Chuck to make his escape plan, where he tells Wilson it'll be a challenge to build a raft before the trade winds change. And Wilson, nods, and he's like, yeah, no, totally. We get the reprised line from Chuck. We live and die by time, and we must not commit the sin of turning our back on time. And he kind of just chuckles to himself. He's kind of losing it. But he just thinks it's funny, the notion of using it as an actual life or death scenario. He then scours the island to make rope out of vines as well as videotape when the vines run out, and a bit of spare rope from a noose that he tied in the past when he contemplated ending his life on the Struggle Island, which he did so very logically. He even made a dummy that he tested, and it clearly broke the branch that he tested it on.
Right. And finally, we come to Chuck's escape from the island in a climactic sequence where he deploys the new sail and makes it over the massive waves and out into the open ocean.
So watching this back, this was one of the biggest surprises for me. I completely forgot the porta potty was a sail. I was definitely wondering why Chuck wasn't using it as the base or the bottom of the raft. But thinking back on it, the signs were there. There's another great visual storytelling shot where the porta potty, he has it set up on the island, and we see it get knocked over by the wind after it first washes up on shore. And that is what sparks the idea for Chuck to build the raft.
Yeah, I love his face in that moment where he's like, huh?
Yeah.
Oh.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah, wheels are turning. And then he turns over to Wilson. He's like, this could work.
Yeah, this could work.
Spot on impression.
I might cut that. Connor, the sail opening up, and is that where you kind of realized it, when the sail opens up on the raft? And
when he's finally crossing over that last wave and the sail, releases. Yeah,
totally. And the reveal that he painted the angel wings and recreated the wings on it again, that's an inspirational moment. Brings a tear to the eye for sure. He finally makes it off. Mark, once again, just to tap into your wealth of knowledge, that's a lot of blood to paint the wings on the thing again. What is he doing to himself?
Yeah, I had a lot of questions too, because are we to assume that was blood again and not anything else?
It could be something else.
I didn't. I thought it was more brown and light blue. Somehow he
he started pigment. Using shit at a certain point.
It could be.
I mean, maybe
it could be, but
right.
And then we get the shot of Chuck rowing away after cresting the wave. He did it. He's looking back at the island, visibly very emotional. I'm sure it's this like deep and complicated sense of Stockholm syndrome, basically, of like the island.
Right.
It's really been his home for years, even though it was miserable in so many ways.
I think this serves as a really nice transition and a great place to talk about the fantastic and sparse score from Alan Silvestri. Castaway features less than 15 minutes of original score for the entire 2 hour and 23-minute runtime, which is really, really abnormal and unusual for a film this long. I think that alone is really incredible. But it uses this subtle string, woodwind, and piano theme to reflect the film's less is more philosophy across all disciplines. And this score is the reason I fell in love with the sound of the oboe. I just think it cuts through the mix and into my soul, so to speak, like a knife. It's very emotional, and it's a beautiful, beautiful sound.
And Mark, earlier on, all we're really hearing are needle drops, like at the beginning of the film, right? We're not hearing score.
Yeah, you're right. This was actually the first time we hear the original score was during this moment as Chuck paddles away. And I think it really helps set the tone as he moves from the ironic safety of this home that he has created on the island for the past 4 years and fading into the mist toward the uncertainty of rescue on the open ocean. There's no guarantees. He's off the island, sure, but he doesn't know if somebody's going to be out there ready to rescue him.
Yeah.
So up next, we come to the final bit of the sequence that I wanted to talk about, out on the open ocean. So Chuck sees a huge whale in the middle of the night, which is kind of this surreal, magical moment. It feels almost like a hallucination that it could just all be taking place in Chuck's head. He sees the eye of the whale, and there's sort of a connection felt there. But this kind of leads into one of the biggest and most famously emotional moments of the whole movie. It's when Chuck loses Wilson after a storm on the ocean. And the way that he loses Wilson, it's almost like Wilson says goodbye and leaves him like,
yeah,
hey,
that's true.
You must continue on your own, because he just kind of topples off of his little perch. But Mark, I'm curious, how hard did this hit you this time? And why does this continue to be effective every time you rewatch it?
As a kid, I think you couldn't really identify, and maybe I just didn't have the emotional intelligence back then to really grapple with the ending of the film with Kelly and Chuck. But something like Wilson was very easy for me to grasp onto even as a kid, and how sad it is. And I think a big part of it is the score. To be honest, there's the main theme features this like ascending melody, followed by like this gradual dissension. And I think it's that initial musical swell upward that is symbolic of Chuck's efforts and perseverance to leave the island. And then that little gentle descent is the bittersweet sadness of leaving it. And then also it's Tom Hanks's performance. It would be nothing without it. It's how apologetic he is to Wilson. The cinematography does a great job at creating this illusion of making Wilson seem like he's just an arm's length away from being captured and rescued. But Hanks's performance clearly indicates that he has no gas left in the tank, so to speak, and would likely drown if he ventured any further away from the raft. Yeah. It's truly heartbreaking the way he says, "I'm sorry, Wilson." So yeah, I did cry rewatching it this time around. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely wells you up every time.
Yeah, I have a weird Mandela effect of this scene, actually. I don't know why I have a memory of my first time watching it that he had to like decide between Wilson and then a boat, that they were like in two different directions, and he had
interesting.
to like go toward. I don't know why. Like that's clearly not what happens, but I thought he had to make a choice, and then he left Wilson behind. So it's like very different rewatching it. That's clearly not the case. But all that's to say, we cap off the sequence with Chuck, who has all but given in to exhaustion and exposure. He's in the bright sunlight all day. He's finally being rescued after being spotted by a freight ship. And the reveal of the ship coming into frame behind him is pretty breathtaking, and such a huge sigh of relief for the audience. The whole time you're just like, wake up, dude, come on. Like, this is your moment.
It's just the perfect shot to end his journey in the Pacific. And then, of course, we get that hard cut to Kelly back on the mainland. The first time we're seeing the mainland in, like over an hour.
Yeah.
And she gets the call that Chuck is alive. And she faints right there on the spot.
Yeah.
With a great camera move over towards her husband and child in the background. And that's yet another brilliant moment of this visual storytelling. It just gives us all we need to know in like a second. Like she has a family now. She has moved on. It's amazing.
Yeah, so seeing Helen Hunt back in the mix brings us back to reality. She's so good in this movie, and she's obviously having like a crazy hot streak at this point in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I wish she was still in more stuff in the cultural zeitgeist. And she, just from here on out, she's one of the lead characters again, and she just plays it so well. She's so emotionally torn the entire time between her new life and a life that she had mourned and moved on from. I think that's a tricky tightrope to walk.
Right. Yeah. And kind of like I was saying before, a lot of the success of this movie is on the shoulders of Tom Hanks, but I will say it's also on the chemistry between Tom Hanks and Helen Hunt, because if they don't have a relationship that's worth fighting for, then there's no reason for Chuck to continue fighting to survive on the island. And I think that just goes to show how great their on-screen chemistry is, because in reality, they don't really have that much time together in the film.
Right.
If I'm remembering correctly, I want to say Helen Hunt was only on set for like 3 days.
Wow.
Or something crazy short.
Made a big impact.
Yeah.
She and Tom Hanks are the linchpin of this movie. And you have to quickly buy into their chemistry for this to work at all.
Right.
And they really pull it off in the best way possible. And just one more mention of the amazing Tom Hanks, Robert Zemeckis, Bill Broyles, and the entire production team who somehow managed to make this happen and create this iconic film. Special shout out to the Fiji team, making this all happen on an island. That could not have been easy, but yeah, amazing movie. Mark, you should have the last word here, so bring us home.
I would say that for me, Castaway resonates because it captures something profoundly human. How isolation can strip a person down to their core and reveal what truly matters, and how hardship can transform someone in ways that don't neatly fit back into ordinary life. And it's the film's craft, namely the restrained cinematography, the thoughtful screenplay, the sparse score, and the grounded performances that bring the audience fully into Chuck's experience and making his isolation, struggle, and growth deeply felt.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I am so glad we got to cover one of your personal favorites, and it has been so fun to push that definition of a scene just a bit to try and do justice to Castaway for its 25th anniversary. And Ren, thank you so much for coming back on the show to chat with us. It's been so fun.
Guys, thank you so much for having me again. This was super fun. Please let me come back again. And I hope to see you guys soon.
Thanks so much, Ren.
You are welcome back anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah, thanks, Ren.
Thank you.
One final reminder that in a separate Nightcap bonus episode, we'll be talking with screenwriter and journalist William Broyles Jr. to discuss his screenplay for Castaway and the process of making the film. So please stay tuned for that within the next week or so. Do you have a favorite scene from Castaway? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on most social media platforms at Scenecraft Podcast for any scheduling updates and news. And we are so excited to announce that the podcast is now available to stream on YouTube. You can support the podcast by checking that out and subscribing to our channel, and leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. It is the holiday season. We would really appreciate that. And finally, a very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. Happy Thanksgiving, and see you all next time.